All right, well, it's 1:02, and we're going to be beginning today's webinar. My name's Matt Melashewski. I am the host for the webinar. The presenter today we have is Mandar Zope, who leads our AI practice. And today's webinar is going to be focusing on the shift to agentic AI. I'm going to turn the floor over to Mandar here shortly, but we're just going to make sure everybody's aware of Cambay's capabilities. So Mandar, if you can go to the next slide for me, please. Excellent. If you're not familiar with Cambay Solutions, we're a Microsoft consulting firm that is headquartered in Texas with about 200 employees. We've been in business for over 13 years, done over 1,000 projects. We are a Microsoft consulting firm, but our primary focus is solving business challenges for our customers. In the Microsoft world, we're highly regarded. We hold all 6 Microsoft designations. We're funding approved, and something unique to us, we have 2 Copilot MVPs on staff. There's only 9 in the US, something we're extremely excited about, as well as having a lot of expert consultants in this world. Our focus is around outcomes, right? We just do not implement technology for the sake of implementing it. For our customers, it's around the business impact that it's going to provide with them and the ROI that with their investments they're going to make. And obviously, in today's world, we are AI obsessed. Every single one of our projects has AI infused to it to really impact our customers' goals. Next slide, Manda. Just very briefly about our capabilities, we do a tremendous amount of work in the modern workspace, which includes Microsoft Teams and SharePoint Online, as well as Copilot in the business application space. It's D365, which includes the customer engagement channel, which is marketing, sales, and service, as well as ERP functionality with Business Central and Dynamics F&O, as well as the low-code solution Power Platform. A very robust data and analytics practice where we consolidate data into analytics data layers and then reporting services on top of that. And then lastly, AI solutions, which Mandar leads our practice in. And truthfully, there's AI infused into all Microsoft solutions. We also like to take a holistic view of the challenges that organizations have and what they're looking to solve with AI. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us about this. Love to have any sort of conversations. If it's about AI or your whole Microsoft, technology set, and love to get engaged. Before I turn the floor over to Mandar, we really focus on practical AI that works, right? It's just not about POCs. It's just about putting into production what makes sense. We also take into account the human change which is involved. Organizations are transforming by leveraging AI, and your employees need to understand kind of how that is going to impact their environment. It's extremely important. It's one of our North Stars that we focus on. And then lastly, as I said, results you can measure. What are the KPIs? What are the organizational improvements that we're going to make? What are the gains your team is going to make? And then what's the bottom line ROI? So truthfully, this is our North Star, but also our commitment to our customer. We're extremely proud of this. In any project that we have, we really focus on these 3 aspects to make for a successful project. And before I turn the floor over to Mandar, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And then also there is a link that you will see in the QA section. This is a form to provide feedback and share interest in any sort of AI engagements that you have, and we'd welcome any conversations. So without further ado, Mandar, I'm going to turn the stage over to you, and I'll be monitoring the questions along the way. Thanks, everybody.
Right. Thanks, Matt. Welcome, everyone. My name is Mandar Zope. I lead our AI practice over here at Cambay Solutions. Been in the Microsoft ecosystem for the last 16 plus years, and was fortunate enough to see how technologies have evolved over time, and now this whole AI wave. So before we jump in, I want to set a quick expectation. My goal for today is that you leave with the feeling less overwhelmed by the word agentic AI and more confident about what it actually means for your organization. What problems it's good at solving, what problems it's not good at solving, and how to take the next step without any guesswork. So here's what we're going to cover today. We will start off with, we call it the automation trap. We will look at why tools, which we have been recently using, like tools such as workflows, scripts, custom scripts, scheduled jobs. Why are they actually holding us back? Section 2 will be about understanding AI agents. So we'll explore 3 different types of agents, what they can actually do. I'll show you some demos as well. And finally, we'll move into decision frameworks, when to use which tool, and critically, when you should not build an agent. And I'll close out with scaling and confidence. I'll cover governance, security, and as Matt earlier mentioned, the people side of transformation. The automation trap. I choose the word carefully, the trap, because here's what I've seen in organizations after organizations. The teams think that they're automating, they think they are being innovative, but they're actually building themselves in a corner. Let me show you what I mean by that part. So I'll provide you some numbers with some studies, recent studies from several institutions, McKinsey, IDC, a bunch of other ones. 87%. That's the percentage of AI and automation projects that never make into production. Think about that. 87% fail before even they launch. 40% of those automation workflows which do make into the production, they break within 12 months due to some kind of changes. There might be an update for your CRM, or a new version of API has shown up, and suddenly your automation is broken. 3 times, that's the maintenance cost versus the initial build for legacy automation. You might spend $100,000 building it, but you might end up spending $300,000 keeping it alive. And one person in this case, one person, that's often how many people understand how your custom scripts actually work and what happens when that person leaves. Like, picture this, if it's a Monday morning, you have a critical workflow which stopped, and that the one person who knows is on a vacation, everyone's scrambling. So what's actually caught in this trap? Let's get a little bit of specific. Now, we saw the numbers, but now I want you to cover some of the reasons. And also, I want you to think about that if it exists in your organization. So legacy automated workflows, you might have built them using Power Automate or any other automation tool. They are working great until something changes. A field has changed, or some schema has been updated, or something new version has been released. Then they break, and you need IT to fix them every single time. You might have custom scripts. Some developers wrote them 3 or 10 years ago. They're brilliant pieces of code, no doubt about that. They're also completely undocumented. Nobody knows exactly what they're doing, but they are just like impossible for you to hand off. You might have some scheduled workflows which are running in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. And there's no ability for any users to actually interact with it. You might have manual processes. We always have done it this way. That's the famous, phrase which everyone uses in digital transformation. It's expensive, but at the same time, it's slow. I'm not saying all of these things to criticize. Every organization has accumulated these over time, and it's natural. You can solve today's problems with today's tool, but here's the thing. I mean, the tools have significantly evolved, and there is a better way now. And that better way is basically the agentic AI. It really changes everything. It's a total mindset shift. So we talked about the problem. Now let's talk about the solution. Let me introduce to you AI agents. So let me paint you a picture of actually how we have gotten here, because understanding the evolution also will help you understand where we are going. We had the first era, which we call it as the traditional automation for assist. like in the assist era, where we had fixed rules. If this happens, then do that. There was no thinking involved in that. The automations were following a set script. When conditions change, they were breaking, and every exception was requiring human intervention. The second one is the Copilot era. This is where we have been for the last couple of years. We are augmenting. The AI is assisting us making human decisions. It's giving us recommendations. It is helping us write draft emails. But we still have the human in the loop for every action and for every decision. That's the era. And the third era, which is the agentic AI, this is the act phase. Agents that reason, that they reason through ambiguity. They can look at a situation, they can understand the context, make a decision, and then take an action. They can also escalate to humans only when needed. So think about it in this way. Traditional automation was like giving someone a script to read word for word, no deviation. While Copilot in the middle, it was like having a colleague who was understanding my goals and just drafting what I asked it to do, was delivering what I was asked to do. But AI agent, on the other hand, now it's kind of like a colleague who really understands your context, what your goals are, and it can handle, like, conversations or actions or processes on your behalf. And it will only come to you when something really is outside of their authority. So that's basically what AI agents are. And let me even go to be specific. Let's go with the definition. An AI agent, basically, at the end of the day, it's a software program. It's a flexible software program which uses generative AI models for interpreting its inputs and then reason through its problems and then take actions, dynamically orchestrating workflows based on the real-time context. Let me just break it down just so that, so every agent basically ends up having these five core components. The first one is the generative AI model. Like, we all are familiar with that part. We have OpenAI, GPT 5.2, 5.1, Codex, all that kind of stuff. We also have Gemini 3, Flash, then we have Anthropic, Claude Sonnet, all these different AI models. They are the brain. They are your reasoning engine. The second one is instructions and scope. That basically means what it is supposed to do, what it is also not supposed to do. It's basically, what are your boundaries? What are that agent boundaries? The third one is knowledge and retrieval. It basically is, kind of access does it have? How many documents am I feeding it as a background knowledge, or how much access it has to my enterprise systems, be it Salesforce or Dynamics or Fabric. Actions and tools, what the ability for that agent to actually do certain things. Can it actually create records? Can it call APIs? Can it update records or even delete records, send some messages? And now even voice agents. Now you can even just have an agent just call someone on the phone and it's just doing its thing. And then finally, the memory, which really is what allows it to, it's the ability for it to remember the context that's across different interactions. So the five core components for an AI agents are the Gen AI models, the instructions, knowledge, actions, and memory. And the one thing what I also do want to highlight, what makes these agents special, are their kind of like, capabilities in terms of they can really execute multiple steps, not just like one single action, but they can chain multiple tools and APIs together, selecting and sequencing based on the context, which usually in the in the olden ways of working, we had to really programmatically code every single pattern. But now it's not, they really reduce that whole aspect. You just have to write the instructions in plain English language and then give it certain tools, what it can do, cannot do, and that's it. And it will actually reason through that part. And the reasoning aspect is also what it makes them special. Like we had fixed workflows, which they were just doing certain things if and else kind of conditions, but they were not necessarily interpreting the intent. Now you can actually have an AI agent that can adjust its strategy based on the nuance inputs which is given. And finally, like they can actually act autonomously. Obviously within guardrails, ones which you define, they can take action, but then at the same time, they can also escalate when you need it. So 3 different types of agents, AI agents, which I'm going to show you today. They're all AI agents. It's just like 3 different variations, and you will see how they progress. So the first one I do want to cover is productivity agents. So they are all about information retrieval and synthesis. They answer your questions or summarize your content. In this example, I'll show you. I'll play the video. You have I've created this really simple benefits expert agent. So you will see over here it has all these description and these instructions at that what that agent can do, what kind of questions it might end up getting asked, and what are you going to refer to, and then how are you going to reply to that. And if you'll see, I've also added a PDF, which was for this example, I just used State of Texas employee benefits PDF. That was the first one which I got by Google search. Anyway, so this agent now, for example, in this case, the end user ends up asking, how do I actually enroll into my optional benefits such as dental or vision? Now the agent now goes and searches your benefits documentation. It finds the answer, presents it in a good format. So if you see over here, there was like no bracket was updated. There were no workflows. It was just intelligent information delivery. That same kind of like, there are so many different use cases for that kind of stuff, like customer service support, or you need to have a knowledge management kind of agent where someone needs to ask some questions, or even summarizing all the documents or PDFs or doing some research. So those are the productivity agents: information retrieval and synthesis. Now, let me move to the second one. These are action agents. Now, they don't just retrieve your information, they execute specific tasks within workflows. They take defined actions with appropriate guardrails. So in this video, what you will see is we first saw an end user was just asking a question about how do I sign up for a dental or a vision plan. Now here in this video, you will see that an agent is actually an end user just wants to update their HSA contribution. Now I've really made that as a simple use case just to drive the point, but the outcome here is that AI is actually taking real actions within the guardrails, which is reducing so many manual people's workload, while still keeping whoever the end user or the employee is in control. So the end user asks, what would you like to be your monthly HSA contribution? It checks ask for your email. And then if you see over here, it already updated to, if I refresh the data, you will see it has already updated from 150 to 255. So this action kind of agents, there's like so many different examples. The most common one which I've seen is IT issue, where someone just wants to just create an IT ticket in ServiceNow. And a lot of times, the more complex, some people's ServiceNow instances are so complex. Like I've personally been myself in that position as well, where I was working at some clients and I wanted to create a ServiceNow ticket. I was totally confused as to what account should I use, what categories, what's which team I need to assign it to. Sometimes all that information is just like grounded into some kind of documentation. But having an agent like this, not only I can ask the questions to it, but then also it can take actions. Like it will also help me fill up the form right within the chat interface. And the other part, what the pattern which I've been seeing recently and even implementing is people are like, we don't need an app for certain for certain use cases, and we might just have let the chatbot ask certain informations to end users. They will fill in the information. If they need help, they will ask it and they will enter it. So it's kind of like, even the old school forms are somehow getting replaced on obviously on a case by case basis, not everything. But there are so many different use cases for that part. Service ticket creation, I said, record updates, scheduling, notifications. So we looked at productivity agents, we looked at action agents, and now finally, the third one, which is autonomous agents. These are where these agents now are handling multi-step processes with minimal insights. These can be complex workflows, and they're doing the end-to-end orchestration. But you will see in this video now that I'm in Copilot Studio, which is the agent builder platform. These are the instructions for outlining kind of like a job it needs to perform. In this case, this is an agent which needs to field all the incoming engagement requests from its clients, which means it needs to monitor all the inbound requests. It identifies kind of like, the right company partner to meet with the customer, and then sends an email to finalize the details. If you see over here, it has like, all the triggers which it needs to allow autonomously. The other thing is also, it's 24/7. It is like, it is looking for all those different triggers. If you see over here, there's so many of them. And finally, you will also see the knowledge base. It is enabling that. Let me just move back a little bit. So these are the actions and the knowledge bases as well. You see over here, you can feed it a lot of different data. It can be static PDFs. You can just map it to a specific folder within your SharePoint, which has all the documents, or you can just even provide an entire dynamic CRM as your knowledge base, like specific tables as the knowledge base for the source. And then also, finally, the agent has also actions. What can it do? It can get the industry taxonomy. It can add a new engagement to its database. It can send an email. These are the only things it can do. So based on the specifics of a specific use case, whatever that incoming request entails, that agent will actually identify, will reason through, and execute the proper actions for that particular situation. And finally, you will also see that there is an activity tab where you can see how many times the agent has run. You can have multiple you can, from a scalable perspective, let's say you're just getting like 100 emails per day. You just had a marketing campaign. That agent is running in parallel. You are actually now just multiplying. Rather than having one person review that email one at a time, this autonomous agent can have like n number of sessions, and each one of those, it's creating that whole loop, figuring out what that intent is, and then taking action as needed. And not only that, for edge cases where it does fail, you can set up an escalation path. You will see over here that right now, I open up a use case where it has already escalated. The end user gets a notification, and now that end user is like, okay, how do you want me to help with this part? And they are basically taking action on that part. So we have kind of also have brought up for edge cases, we're bringing the human in the loop. So this is the power of autonomous agents. We saw the first one was just purely retrieval. The second one was kind of like, the first one was like low autonomy in there. It was only just able to find information. The middle one is basically action agents with medium autonomy, I would say, to take only specific actions, while the third one, autonomous, is like high autonomy that can orchestrate the entire process. So One thing I do want to mention, a key point here is that most of the organizations, they just don't jump directly into high autonomy, even though if it exists. Usually it's safer to start with productivity agents, then move into action agents, and then scale into autonomous agents. Once you have the governance in place, you have the proper security in place, and change management.
Hey, Mander, can you go back to that
Mhm.
slide for a second? I think it's
Sure.
important to talk a little bit about the impact that this has from, an organizational perspective. When you think about productivity agents, right, that's saving employee individual time on finding relevant documentation, right? Kind of that knowledge search. Action items almost takes it to that next step when you show that the HR benefit of, dating your HSA contribution. Think about how that impacts just not the employee's time, but also your HR analyst, your HR manager who has to actually go through the process and find the form, update the system. So you start seeing some impactful ROI from just a task perspective. And then when you get to the autonomous agent, almost think about that as a whole process that gets removed for an employee's, space. So for an example, I was even thinking about this from a based upon your business, and sometimes you don't like to think about pricing. You could actually have an agent which provides pricing to a potential prospective client by actually having searching and finding that the product price and sending it back to the potential customer. Think about that time to market that is so impactful when you talk about trying to close a sale, right? Is trying to get that information as quickly as possible, which is relevant to them. So lots of use cases, but when you think about it, how is it going to impact your business, right? If it's just time savings for an employee, reduces employee tasks, or even automating a whole process from end to end, that's really the power that we're talking about here. And I don't want to miss that mark either.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just add to that one more use case. Like we recently did a POC. It was for supply chain optimization, not HR, but it was kind of like, this autonomous agent was monitoring their inventory levels and it was predicting the demand. And it was kind of like, even identifying where do we might have potential shortages. And it was also not only that, it was evaluating its supplier options based on the way that company had defined how to evaluate suppliers. And then not only that, it was initiating a purchase order. And once it does all that stuff, it was then sitting in the manager's queue for approval and review. So so many use cases. Yeah, basically the simpler way to summarize one last time, productivity agents will help you retrieve and synthesize the information, while the action agents are executing specific tasks, and the autonomous agents can run multiple step processes end to end with minimal oversight. So when not to use agent? Here's where, not everything needs an AI agent. I know we're at an AI webinar focusing on AI agents, but I'm like, but here's the thing, like, if I help you build the wrong solution, I haven't helped you at all. So the task when don't use agents when you have a structured and predictable task. If you have a process which is following set rules every single time with no exceptions and no ambiguity, you're just better off with just simple deterministic code. You don't necessarily need Gen AI models. You can fixed logic is always faster. It is also cheaper. You can maybe use AI to write that fixed logic. Because writing scripts code is now just faster now. When you need static knowledge retrieval, for example, if users just need to query certain documentation, you can just build a RAG application, retrieval augmented generation, simpler, more focused. And also SaaS agents, some SaaS agents which already exist. Microsoft offers so many pre-built agents for so many different scenarios. I think over time, that count will just keep going up and you will just have a n number of agents. Already, when you go to Microsoft 365 Copilot, you have the researcher, which can do all the research. You have a data analyst. You have Copilot for sales, service. Then you have Dynamics agents. Then you just have your normal M365 agents. So it's like so many different things. A lot of times, basically, it boils down to, for a specific use case, why rebuild what already exists? Because a lot of times, if there is a rebuild template, maybe you're better off by just using and maybe even customizing on top of that part. The other thing which I will mention is, when should you use agents? When you really need dynamic reasoning, when you really want to leverage the AI to do some complex reasoning, when your tasks require kind of like, interpreting ambiguous like inputs. Because if we want to do that in traditional code, we have to just think about every possible scenario and translate that into a code. But we don't necessarily, when you're using AI for that specific purpose, you don't have to do that. It can interpret all the different kinds of input, ambiguous inputs which the end user might provide. And really, when the context is required, when should the right action needs to be taken? So don't use agents when you have structured or predictable tasks, or just need, or when there are SaaS agents already existed, and use agents when you really need dynamic reasoning. So this is, now we'll talk basically about, we looked at all the different agents, types of different agents, and I want to now cover how should you go across choosing which path to take, like strategy you should go. And you'll quickly see within Microsoft ecosystem, there are just like so many ways to solve the same problem. The one main fundamental vision, even from Microsoft, which I want you to understand, it is key, because Microsoft calls it the UI for AI, which is the main Copilot. This is the new, the Clippy kind of version of it. This Copilot is, you will see it in every single Microsoft application. It is available in your Outlook, in your Teams, in Word, in SharePoint, in Dynamics, everywhere. Every single Microsoft product, the same how we used to have the Clippy lurking in every single tool, Copilot basically has taken its job, and now it's there. But it is actually doing not only, it is actually doing the job of becoming that surface layer. It's becoming that front door for AI. You can summon all kinds of agents from there. Doesn't matter what platform they're built using. From, you can create agents using just M365, like simple not retrieval agents. Using M365 Copilot, you can call them just by pressing Shift at. It will show up the list of the agents. You can also call an agent which was creating using Copilot Studio. You can also call an agent which was using a Foundry, and then a Copilot Studio agent can call a Foundry agent, or anything. The combination is pretty, whatever. It's unlimited. But what keeps it special, and really from an end user perspective, you don't have to, this Copilot is there in every single tool, and you just have to figure out on how creating the agent and surfacing it, and then end user can call it from here. And the other thing which I will mention is Agent 365. This is something which is really brand new, which was just announced last month. But this is your control system, and you get a really 360-degree view of all the things AI within your entire organization. How many agents do I have? How many AI services am I using? And not only Microsoft, it goes even beyond that. Even like what kind of OpenAI services am I using, or Google services, or AWS services. And not only it gives you that visibility, then it also allows you to set up guardrails on top of that part. So Agent 365 is really a unified platform for managing your AI on scale. The other thing which I do want to highlight is when it comes to Microsoft Copilot and all these different things, what fundamental thing which has really changed is previously we used to always integrate. We had to create integration. With these tools now, you can just connect to your data wherever it lives. And you have data connectors, you have MCPs, like an agent can talk to another agent. So whenever we talk about this whole agentic AI in general, it's not just about the model, it is also about how are you safely connecting and reasoning with your enterprise data and then actually taking some real actions. The other thing, now this is a pretty big slide, but let me walk you through this diagram just to give you a little bit of a high level overview. I usually think about use this analogy to explain this Microsoft AI agent ecosystem. It's basically think about this whole ecosystem as if it's a modern office building. You have a lobby where people are coming in, and you have several departments where different people work. You have an IT room, you have HR, all this thing, building security, blah, blah, blah. So the lobby is basically the user experience. This is where we just saw, we talked about Copilot. That's kind of like, how your people are interacting. They can also interact within Teams or M365, or even while they're on the phone or web or mobile. So one agent, but it can just have many entry points. You can build it once and even publish it every single place. The second layer is the construction. And kind of like, what are the building tools? How am I going to build these agents? You have Copilot Studio, which is kind of like a website builder, but in this case, it's mostly drag and drop and configuring a lot of things for creating these agents. You have, when you have some edge cases, you can use the M365 Agent SDK for your developers who want a little more control and they want to write code to handle some complex things, which require some heavy lifting. And then you also have AI Agent Service from Microsoft, where you just want full flexibility and full control. So I put it this way. It's better to always start with Copilot Studio as a first place. And then when you have edge cases where you really need to use something more complex, then you can go to AI Agent Service. The third one is the model hosting, which is kind of like, the brain things. This is where your intelligent kind of links. We have all the different AI models. Microsoft even just recently had an agreement with Anthropic now. So all those Anthropic models, Claude Sonnet and Opus, are available within Microsoft ecosystem to use. And what that basically entails, just to take when we are using any models within, let's say in Copilot Studio, if I'm using Sonnet or for Opus models from Claude, first of all, they're agreeing from a security perspective. None of the data is going to get used by anyone or training. It all stays within the context. And the same agreement which you sign up with Microsoft follows even with that. So that's the part. And that same applies to even all the rest of the models within Foundry as well. In Foundry, you will see thousands and thousands of models. There's just like so many of them, open source, DeepSeek. I'm not even going to count for the part. But the model hosting, basically, that's your brain. That's where the intelligence kind of lives. Underneath that is your knowledge and tools. This is where your agent is actually accessing the information. An agent can talk to another agent, that is agent to agent. But even more than that, it's like, how many data sources does it have access to? Does it have access to my Microsoft Fabric or SQL Server database or SAP system or Dynamics, or even like, other agents? So that's the fourth layer. The fifth layer, which we just talked about, is the Agent 365. That is your governance layer. So the kind of like, the security desk that checks your badges and monitors like, all the cameras. So who's actually allowed to create an agent? What can an agent do? What data can that agent see? That's kind of like, that's the Agent 365 layer. And finally, we have the environment management, kind of like, the building manager as like, someone who has to keeps the lights on. Like when do certain things move to production, or how are you tracking your costs and all that kind of stuff, like the operational layer underneath all that stuff. So yeah, that was the Microsoft AI agent ecosystem with my building analogy. You have the lobby, you have construction, you have the brain trust, you have the
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out, Matt, or actually to the people who join the call, we help you guide which tools to use, right? And lead you through this journey. Mander is
yeah,
kind of showing how the sausage is made, but sometimes we just make the sausage, but educate you along the way. So hopefully Mander's been able to explain there's a lot of different tools in the tool set. We choose what's going to be best for you.
yeah. So on that note, we created this just to simplify, like all the different tools you have in your toolkit. We created a simple decision tree just to kind of guide us through that part. Like, so the gate one basically is kind of like your viability, right? So I basically would say is like the first question you need to ask is this task structured and predictable? If yes, let's stop and just don't use any agent, use code, or use just the traditional automation. Don't overthink it. The second one is availability. Okay, if it's not purely predictable, then the question you need to be asking is the information primarily static knowledge retrieval? For example, it can be some policy documents or FAQs or internal wikis. If that's yes, then you can just build the RAG application using Foundry or even Copilot Studio. If you need a little more than retrieval, then can these SaaS agents, which you have already paid for, or which is already there, can they be used? So in that sense, like, you have Copilot, Fabric, Dynamics 365 agents, Foundry for both for, and then GitHub Copilot as well, GitHub Copilot agent as well, where you can just write up code pretty fast. I mean, the main thing is start simple and just slowly, like, move on to other like complex things. Always, my suggestion is always to use the out-of-box agents first, get them into usage, and then build upon that part. And finally, we have the customization layer where you can just build custom agents using Copilot Studio, Foundry, or even Complex when you just want to bring up your own containers and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like a decision tree to just help you decide for a specific use case, which one to use when, and you can align that as a which path should you go with. And we looked at Microsoft AI agent ecosystem, how to choose a path. And now basically I do want to touch on the end-to-end life cycle of actually building an agent. So deciding to build an agent is just the beginning, but now you also need to think about the entire life cycle. You create the agent, you define the instructions in the build phase, you give it knowledge sources, you connect it to all the different like services, give it actions. That's, you build it fast. Then you deploy it to production, roll it out to users. Then you have operate, where you have just ongoing work. But the other part is the governance layer, where you're setting up, and that applies to all of these three phases, where you're setting up your policies, your boundaries, all the different controls in place. And the other thing which is the evaluation part. This is something which is new. I mean, in old school software development lifecycle, we used to call it QA testing. In the AI world, it's mostly called as evaluations or evals, as some folks have started to call. This is really key because of all the different projects I've done recently for the last couple of years, creating an agent is just so easy and fast. You can do that in a couple of days or even weeks, based on the use case, obviously, and complexity. You can get to a rapid prototype pretty fast, but the evaluation usually takes longer because now you have to test it across all the different scenarios. Is my agent actually performing? Are there any edge use cases? And the evaluation phase is really key in terms of making sure. It's more key, I would say. It's 3 times more key than the traditional QA, which we used to be used with. So it has kind of flipped a little bit. Like usually writing the code used to take a longer, and then the QA person will just test it in a couple of days just to make sure is it working or not. Now it's kind of flipped the other way around. You can get to a MVP pretty quickly, but the evaluation takes longer. And then finally, you are monitoring it. When are things going wrong? How is your agent performing? How many API calls? Is it really getting too many exceptions? So you can optimize based on that part and kind of mitigate. So this is basically the end-to-end agentic AI lifecycle.
Hey, Mander, before you jump further, we got about 12 minutes left, so just want to pace your conversation.
Yep, sounds good. Yeah, I think we might have some extra time for questions. So the last section basically I want to cover is scaling with confidence. And kind of this is where your good intentions are meeting the reality. So let's talk about governance. But even over here, I want you to think about from a whole mindset shift again. Like a lot of times when people think about, when they even hear the word governance, they think restrictions or red tape, things that will slow you down. But governance, it actually enables the scale. It doesn't necessarily restrict your innovation. It actually makes it possible. Without governance, you can't move beyond experiments. You're stuck in that pilot phase. So these are the 4 pillars, which I think are pretty key. The first pillar is the identity and access, and that covers who can create those agents. Not everyone should be able to create those agents. Who can deploy those agents? Who can use those agents? It needs to be role-based access. What data can that agent access? It's critical from a security perspective. So that's your identity and access. Second pillar is policy and boundaries. What can they do? We have to really define them clearly. What processes require human approval? What are the thresholds or triggers? And what are the escalation triggers? When should an agent say, I need a human? And you need to have policies for that part. And you also need to document all of this stuff. The third pillar is monitoring and observability. The real-time, visibility, as we saw, as I talked about earlier from Agent 365, it's really critical. It's just to give you a visual of what the agents are actually doing. And you also not only need to see that, but then you need to trace how are they taking decisions? Are they taking the right decisions based on are they reasoning properly as expected? And have you detected any anomalies? If an agent suddenly starts behaving strangely, you need to know about that immediately before just letting it be out there for a while. So it's really key in that part. And finally, the other thing I will say is you have to measure versus the expectations. Is that agent really doing what it's supposed to do? The fourth pillar and the final pillar is actually the response side of things. Now, who gets notified when something gets wrong? What is your escalation path? How do you stop, the agents which are misbehaving? Maybe it's just like your kill switch. And then also figuring out, what was the root cause for certain things wrong. So just one more plug for Microsoft Agent 365. It actually is it provides capabilities for each of those pillars. And as you all might agree, each one of them is pretty critical for any organization. So we covered governance now. The other thing which I do want to specifically highlight is also security, because if you get this wrong, nothing else matters. I mean, from a Microsoft standpoint, you have authentication and authorization, like, agents who can agents they are basically acting on behalf of end users or as service principals. So you really need to make sure that you establish an identity and you're managing their permissions. And even just like, as we talked about earlier, like, you prevent the authority escalation. An agent shouldn't be able to do more than what the end user has invoked it to do. The other thing is data protection, that we really need to make sure that it has access to the appropriate data. All the compliance related stuff is is in compliance with that part. And then, like, Microsoft has so many different things. It has the Entra ID integration. You can set up your data loss prevention policies. Purview has a lot of different things for threat detection. So kind of like, the building blocks are all there, but you just need to configure them and operate on it thoughtfully. Now, the other thing which I really wanted to highlight is, now this is something new. The AI has actually introduced these new threats, which normally our traditional security wasn't necessarily addressing. These are just the 4 things which I've added. I'm quite sure there will be more, but the prompt injection, jailbreaking, data poisoning, and model extraction. Just on a high level, prompt injection is where someone is trying to or malicious inputs are trying to manipulate your agent to do unintended actions or even disclosure. So someone might try to carefully craft a prompt that is tricking your agent to reveal some information it shouldn't, or do something which it shouldn't do. Similarly, jailbreaking is where they are trying to make an agent violate the specific boundaries it is supposed to be in. While data poisoning, on the other hand, is like it's compromising your knowledge base or training data. So if I can corrupt if anyone's knowledge base, then I'm corrupting your agents kind of like, outputs as well. At the same time, model extraction it's kind of like, someone is trying to reverse engineer your agent's behavior, and it has a lot of intellectual kind of like, property concerns. So the end of the day, security should be always a continuous thing. It's not a project with an end date. It always evolves. The threats are evolving, and within the whole AI agent ecosystem, new things are coming in. So it must be a first-class concern, not an afterthought. So we looked at governance, we looked at security. The only thing, the 2 things which I will leave you with is the people side of things and framework which we have created. So let me talk about the people side of transformation. So when it comes to, it's just technology, right? It's not complex architecture, or it's not even governance. Like, it's really the people what are your major factor if you want AI success. Remember that 87% failure, which we talked about at the start of the talk presentation? So the differentiator between kind of like, success and failure isn't necessarily the technology. It's basically how your organization is preparing their people for these new AI-powered ways of working. So some of the elements which I'll quickly go through is communication. We all know it. We really need to build AI awareness and also trust at the same time. We need to have clear messaging about why AI, what has changed, how are your roles evolving. It's not just about tools which are getting deployed, but it also is about what does that mean for real humans in real jobs. It needs to be communicated, because people are not just going to assume on their own. Leadership also needs to have kind of like, visible executive sponsorship. And they need to really, basically, if the C-suite is not necessarily using AI, why would anyone else, right? So they must really model the AI adoption, and they should champion all the different use cases and even kind of like remove the barriers. Third part is the training part. Yes, you really need to increase everyone's AI influency and skill building. It's beyond tutorials, honestly. And it is also more than prompt engineering, because a lot of people are just kind of like focusing on how to do prompt engineering. I think it's also about how should you use the AI, the AI judgment aspect of it, and the human AI kind of like collaboration patterns. How should they be? You really need to build those teams which are confident with working alongside all these different tools and AI agents, so that they're just working with them. And then finally, it's the resistance. Everyone's fearful about whatever job displacement or skills. I mean, obviously, don't dismiss them, but actually just address them in a way so that you're. I mean, I always say we need to turn our skeptics into advocates. There's just so much stuff to do, and it's just not going to happen right away. It will take whatever. And so our formula for AI transformation is that AI transformation success equals technology times adoption. So if your technology score is 10, but if your adoption score is 0, your transformation basically is 0. It's multiplication, not addition. So you really need to be investing in change management. And it will, as I showed you the number, it will give you 3 times more higher AI project success rate. 3 times. All right. So we looked at
Amanda, we have 1 minute left, by
governance.
the way. We're almost out of time here.
Almost done. This is our framework. This is my last couple 2 slides left. This is our methodology, which we have created for actually creating production grade agents. We call it the Vista framework. We have vision. I know it sounds pretty obvious, but most AI projects are skipping this entirely. It really means, what are you trying to accomplish? What does success look for you? What are the boundaries? What is the agent actually supposed to do and should not do? Iteration is where you're actually rapidly prototyping it with real data, gathering feedback. Supervision is, here's where you are actually setting up, implementing human in the loop controls. You're defining those escalation paths and creating those approval workflows. And we have trust, that it's the measurement. It's not just it's a feeling, it's a measurement. You're building your confidence through performance. You're tracking the accuracy and you're measuring the outcomes. How often is the agent giving me the right answer? How often is it taking the correct action? How often is it escalating it? Was that the right call? Or was that a wrong call? What that agent should have done or not have done? And finally, the autonomy. This is kind of obviously the destination. But I mean, it's the last step, but not the first one. It progressively expands over time. Full autonomy doesn't necessarily mean no oversight. It means oversight, but exception based rather than complete, approval based. So this is the framework which we have created within Cambay, and we apply it to every single project. Now, when it comes to engaging with us now, last slide.
Yeah, Amanda, let me take this one on. I'll kind of wrap it up as well, because we're over time.
Mhm.
So just a little bit here. AI discovery is ridiculously important as you think about this. You have to make the right foundation before you start building anything. Obviously, we're happy to discuss any sort of pilots, right, to prove out the use cases it has. But the discovery and kind of getting the governance and ready is incredibly important as you look to scale these opportunities. So and then obviously we have kind of an offering for enterprise AI at scale. So a multitude of different opportunities that we have for engagements. There is a form, if you could fill those out. Love to get some feedback on this. Also, if there's any use cases, we are happy to have an hour-long kind of workshop to discuss those with you. Kind of talk about kind of like, hey, what's your readiness from an organization perspective? any use cases you're looking to impact. And then, as I said, Mandar showed a lot of how the sausage was made today. That's kind of our job, is to lead you along that path. We'll make it simple for you to really accelerate this, because we understand most, as the C-suite keeps on asking, is probably most of you are probably familiar with, a lot of the CEOs and executives are asking for some sort of AI initiative. Use cases are extremely impactful, but also having that foundation to grow into is important, because if you're not thinking about it, I know your competitors are. So love, please fill out the form. Please reach out to the question. We'll send a follow-up email with a recording as well as the deck for you to internalize. But we really appreciate anybody's time. And if anybody has any questions, we're willing to stay on longer if necessary too.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.